رمضان رمضان شهر القرآن هدى لنا.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Ramadan Talks, where we talk about topics inside and outside of Ramadan. Now, one of our earlier conversations, we're talking about the Qur'an, and a lot of interest is how it was compiled and how it was revealed. Dr. Slimi, can you elaborate as a starting point with the difference between Makki and Madani?
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. We spoke about briefly comparison how the Quran was compiled versus the Bible. We said that everything happened during the time of the Prophet. Quran was memorized in parallel to the the scribes writing the Quran, especially towards the end of the life of the Prophet sallallahu. He reviewed it, especially with Zayd ibn Thabit, Ubay ibn Ka'b. There were quite a few scribes, but these are the most popular. Not only who were scribes, also memorized the Quran. Quite a good number of those who memorized. Later, many of them died during the time of Abu Bakr, Siddiq, may Allah be pleased with him. But in a nutshell, the Makki Quran, as we said, there are surahs that were revealed, or verses, not necessarily the full surah, were revealed in Mecca, and surahs revealed in Medina. Anybody who has basic, good, reasonable knowledge of the Arabic would tell you the difference between Makki and Madani. Makki Quran was addressing people who didn't believe. They had issues with God, revelation, existence, questions about life, creation, contemplation, answers of universal questions such as where do we come from, why are we here, where are we going to, what's in heaven, who is God, how do we know about God. These actually are timeless and they repeat themselves. In Medina, it was more about governing the community, which became a country later. So here is a group of people who went to Medina. Then they have the supporters, the people of Medina. They do a treaty. The Prophet ﷺ was the very first ruler who did this constitution of freedom of religion, freedom of movement, and freedom of speech. And we call it Charter of Medina, as you can read in my book, Our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And then he ﷺ created a very inclusive society, but practical Quran. The very first thing he did, clean up Medina, removing the garbage, living in a clean environment, building the masjid, and the masjid became the center point for the community. So as the revelation is coming, it comes with organization, how you rule, how you govern. Verses like seek their counsel. Had you or were you harsh-hearted or rude, they would have left you, but because of your mercy they come to you. Forgive them and seek forgiveness for them, فَاعْفُ عَنْهُمْ وَاسْتَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ, and seek their consultation, their counsel, their opinion. Include them, let them partake in all the decision making and all the projects. So it was a community like no other community before. People of Medina and Mecca are brothers and sisters, and that was one of the very first things the Prophet ﷺ did. So the Quran now, the language changes. You have a community of believers, but you also have the people of the book. You have mainly Jews, Jewish tribes who were in Medina. So how do you address them? Invitation to work together, and you see chapter 3 verse 60 to 64, a call to the people of the book to come to one word. We worship one God. Let's respect one another. Yes, you don't accept the message of Islam. You don't accept Prophet as his messenger. Okay, live with us as citizen. You're protected. That was the model society. And it was reflected in many societies later in Andalusia, in Morocco, in the Ottoman Empire, in many places in India. And that was the Quran. So Makki was addressing issues that are more personal, faith and humanity and equality, things that we usually see people struggling with in human rights. But you see that at a higher level in Medina, where society is, starting family, marriage, divorce, your own salat, wudu, things like that, to all laws and regulations.
Now, naturally, one of the questions that some of our viewers might have is, why not have it all revealed at one time? Why the separation between Makki and Madani?
For the very reason I mentioned, it's society that is changing. The addressees are different. So now you're addressing believers. In the beginning, it says, Ya ayyuhan nas, or humanity. Ya bani Adam, or children of Adam, like the surahs, of Mecca. But now in Medina, O you who believe, O you who declared faith, O you who have done, your bay'ah, your allegiance, all of that has been now changed in Medina because the listener. However, when we read it today, both the Makki and Madani address us. The Makki addresses my heart, my questions as a human being, anybody interested to learn about Islam. The Madani shows me how to run my affairs, govern my life, marriage, divorce, children, education, inheritance, laws, consultation. All these values and principles were in Medina.
Now, speaking of application, sometimes you might find the youth or people looking at the Qur'an, it's old, it's ancient. How does it apply to today's time? So Makki and Madani, maybe it was good for that society, but what would you say for today's time when it comes to specifically implementation?
This argument basically is a fallacy. Sometimes people use, it was revealed in Mecca and Medina. Well, remember what I just said earlier. It's about deeper issues that are relevant in every context. So the Quran talks about honesty, talks about sharing, talks about caring, talks about working together, making things work, finding always the solution, take the high road, bringing people together. The call of the Quran is to bring people closer to God. Every messenger's mission was to bring people together, closer to each other and closer to the Creator. That repeats itself all the time. So is it this argument that is not good? What's not good? Yes, some stories about the Prophet, his family, or prophets before him, those stories, you take lesson by analogy from them. Yes, the stories were at that context, but you take the analogy. You take the story from the Bible or the Quran of Joseph and his brothers, Yusuf. The same story of jealousy and competition, and you forget the blood relationship and that you're from parents. That story repeats itself. The story is different, but you can see it and identify same tricks and same hard feelings and same expressions in today's world. Quran is relevant.
MashaAllah, Dr. Slimi, that adds a whole nother layer of understanding. Now, that part about misapplication or implementation, that's a whole episode in of itself. Could you give us a little taste of what that is?
Yeah, well, maybe for our viewers to remember, Quran is about 4 things. And that's like life in general. Learning how to read in life, education, understand. You understanding in life, knowledge. When you understand, you're supposed to practice. That's the third right of the Quran upon us. What is knowledge that is practical? We call it wisdom. And when we gain these 3, we teach it to others. In life, we give back to the community, to humanity.
So just to make sure I understand, read, understand, implement, and then teach the Quran.
Yes, and that actually goes in life. You educate yourself, you earn knowledge, and then when you practice it, you gain wisdom, and then you start giving back in different ways. Very important question you gave. We'll probably tackle it next time. It is the misapplication. Some people read and they don't understand. Some people read and understand, but they don't practice. Some people, they read and understand, they practice for themselves, but they don't give back. This is the dilemma. We'll talk about it later.
Well, I'm excited to dive into that. If you miss one of those steps, looks like it ends up in a different direction totally. So Jazakallah khairan, Dr. Slimi, for that. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, feel free to leave your comments and questions down below. We're happy to hear from you. It's a two-way street after all. And until next time, Assalamu alaikum.